Last summer I moved into my late grandmother's Victorian home. The lockdown had just ended. I thought the quiet would help me focus as a freelance graphic designer. I knew this place well. I spent many summers here as a kid. I hoped the memories would bring me peace. But I was wrong. At first, everything seemed fine. I unpacked my things and set up my workspace. I found some inspiration in the old details of the house. But on the third night, it started. I heard a rhythmic tapping at my bedroom window. I thought it was just a branch swaying in the wind. It felt creepy, though. I pushed the thought away. As the week went on, the tapping got louder. I saw flashes of movement outside. It was hard to work when I felt so watched. Shadows darted beyond my vision. And then, my things began to go missing. My keys would be on the table 1 minute and vanish the next. I was losing track of reality. By Friday, I nearly jumped every time I heard the tapping. I would grip my chair tight, listening carefully. I peeked outside several times, but nothing was there. It was probably all in my head, I told myself. I thought I was just exhausted. Then, one evening, I yelled out the window, "Who's there?" I felt foolish. I almost expected silence, but I heard a faint whisper in return. Ice ran through my veins. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. My heart raced. When I looked outside, it was still dark. Over the next few days, I felt the whispers in me, cold and clammy. The wind would blow and I'd feel like I was drowning in memories. I resented my thoughts. I felt trapped in my own home. It wasn't the safe space I thought it was. One night, I got ready for bed. I turned off the light and saw something standing in the corner of my room. My breath caught. I didn't want to look closer, but I had to. I told myself it was nothing, just my tired mind playing tricks, but it didn't disappear. It just stood there. I turned toward the door. To my shock, it was open. The hallway was dark, but I felt a thick air around me. My heart raced, and I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my phone and tried to call someone. I realized my hands were shaking. The whispers grew louder. I could almost hear them now, like they were touching me. In a rush, I stepped into the hallway. My feet moved on their own, drawn to the dark. But then I heard it, the tapping again. It was frantic now, echoing through the hall. I turned back, wanting to run, but I couldn't. Something was pulling me. As I reached for a light switch, I glanced back toward the corner. I leaned against the wall, holding my breath. Then I saw it clearly. A shadow, dark and twisted, moved from the corner. My heart stopped. I felt a chill wash over me. I'd been peeking at my own fears, but now they stared back. The darkness whispered my name. I blinked, and it was gone. Just as I turned back around, I noticed my phone slipped from my fingers, smashing against the floor. I felt the air leave my lungs. How was it this real? How could I be so alone, yet feel so watched? What was happening to me? I stumbled back into my room, heart racing. I could hardly breathe. I had to get out of this house. I grabbed my belongings in a frenzy, but then I remembered my keys. Panic shot through me as I searched frantically, my mind racing. Where were they? I dashed to the kitchen, hoping I left them on the counter, but as I flung open the drawer, nothing. I clenched my fists. They had to be here somewhere. I was losing it. The whispers returned, swirling around my ears. "Stay. Stay," they seemed to say. I turned in circles, trying to make sense of it all. It felt like the house was alive, holding me captive. Just then, I caught a glimpse of something in the hallway. My breath hitched. A figure? No, it couldn't be. I took a cautious step forward. There was nothing but darkness and silence. But the air felt heavier, almost like it was pressing down on me. I decided to make another attempt at the outside world. I had to find my keys before I could leave. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I walked back toward the living room. The windows loomed like dark eyes, and the tapping returned. A quick succession of knocks that almost felt deliberate this time. As I crossed the threshold, I felt a cold draft rush past me, sending chills down my arms. Suddenly I froze. I saw something move across the window, a shadow darting out of sight. Curiosity and dread battled within me. I had to know if it was real. What if it was just my mind playing tricks again? Against my better judgment, I crept closer to the window, but as I reached for the curtain, a sharp sound interrupted, a loud thud from the back door. What was that? My heart thudded wildly against my ribs. I couldn't ignore this. I moved toward the door, opening it just a crack. The night air was thick, and the yard lay still, bathed in moonlight. But then, in the distance, I saw it, an outline behind the old oak tree. The fears I had pushed to the back of my mind surged forward. I stepped outside, squinting to see better. My phone lay shattered at my feet, but I didn't dare rush back for it now. I called out, "Hello?" Only silence answered back. I crept closer, my heart pounding louder than ever. And then I spotted something unusual near the tree, an old, weathered trunk. I moved closer, my curiosity igniting. I brushed away leaves that hid the base of the trunk, revealing a rusty latch. That's when I saw it. A glint of metal, a key laying perfectly in the dirt. Hope surged through me. Perhaps it was my way out. Just as I reached down to grab it, the tapping from my window echoed again, only this time it was deafening, furious. I snatched the key, clutching it tight. But as I turned back toward the house, a voice hissed from behind me. "You shouldn't have come here." I froze, fear washing over me like a wave. The air shifted, and the whispers swelled around me. I was not alone, and I was about to discover what I had really awakened. I stood there, the key still clenched in my hand, but my legs felt heavy. The voice seemed to wrap around me, pushing me down into the earth. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body didn't respond. It spoke again, softer this time. "You've disturbed what was resting." I turned slowly, forcing myself to look at the figure that haunted the edge of the shadows. A woman. Her face was pale and sunken, hair disheveled. She stared at me with empty eyes that held a kind of sorrow I couldn't begin to understand. "Who are you?" I managed to croak, my voice barely above a whisper. I stepped back instinctively, but she didn't move. It was as if she was tethered to that spot, just out of reach. "Nothing but a keeper now," she said, and I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. "But you've brought it back." I wasn't sure what she meant, but dread started to creep in. I glanced back at the house. What had I awakened? I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening was far from over. "I just want to leave," I said, my voice shaky. "You can't. Not until it's ready." Her words were chilling, but I couldn't think clearly. All I knew was that I needed to escape this madness. I turned and ran toward the house, adrenaline pushing me forward, but the tapping intensified. The noise rang in my ears as I slammed the door behind me, locking it out. For a moment, I felt safe, but the darkness in the house felt more alive than before. I sprinted toward the front room, where the windows glared down, almost mocking me. When I flipped on the light, everything felt wrong. The atmosphere buzzed with an electric tension. I glanced around, searching for something, anything familiar. The shadows draped across the walls twisted and contorted, and I swore I saw a figure moving behind the couch. I took a tentative step closer. "Hello?" My voice was small, lost among the rising fear. Nothing, just silence. Then, as if responding to my call, the flickering lights dimmed. Panic threatened to take over again, but I fought against it. I needed to think. I needed answers. The key. I pulled it from my pocket, examining it. Was it even meant for this house? That's when I noticed the floorboards creaking behind me. Cold dread washed over me again. I slowly turned, but there was nothing there. Nothing except the whispers, growing louder, swirling around me like a storm. "Stay! Stay!" "No!" I shouted, feeling defiance surge within me. I had to push back against whatever this was. I had come too far. My heart raced. There had to be a way out, but the woman's words haunted me. Just then the front door slammed open with a force that shook the walls. I felt the rush of cold air. Who was it? I stepped back, pressing myself against the wall. The whispers turned into frantic echoes, and just like that, the lights flickered off. Darkness swallowed me whole. And then I heard it. A low, guttural sound, a whisper from the shadows. "You shouldn't have come here." My breath caught. I was no longer alone. I stood frozen in the darkness. The guttural whisper echoed again, each word curling around me like a vine. "You shouldn't have come here." I held my breath, straining to hear anything else, but it felt like the silence had a weight of its own. Suddenly, a loud crash from the kitchen broke the stillness. My heart raced as instincts kicked in. I took a cautious step away from the wall, inching toward the source of the sound. An overwhelming urge to flee clawed at me, but curiosity won. What if it was just something harmless? I needed to know. The kitchen was dimly lit, shadows moving across the walls like they were alive. I peered around the corner, my mind racing through various possibilities. Maybe a window had blown open, or a stray animal had knocked something over. But when I stepped in, a chill swept through the air. The room felt wrong. My eyes went wide as I noticed the pantry door ajar, a crooked silhouette standing within the shadows. Panic surged, and I backed away. That's when I saw it, a flicker of movement. The door creaked, inching closer to fully opening. I braced myself, trembling. "Is anyone there?" I called out, trying to sound firm. All I got in response was a low, keening wail that made my stomach drop. Then a shadow moved. Lurching to the side, something rushed past me, a blur of darkness darting out of the kitchen and down the hallway. I blinked, heart pounding. Nothing. Had I imagined it? I turned to the pantry, my breath hitching. Cautiously, I approached the door. It swung slightly, inviting me in. "Just a shadow," I whispered to myself, though I didn't believe it. As I gripped the handle, I felt a shiver trickle down my spine. I had to know what was hiding inside. I pulled the door open, and it creaked loudly, echoing in the quiet house. The space was dark, but I could make out shapes in there, cans of food stacked high, bags of stale chips. And then, in the far corner, I saw something that made my heart drop. A set of small footprints led from the back of the pantry to the floor. I stepped backward, bumping into the counter. My breath quickened. "What?" I could see small muddy smudges like they had been skittering around. I felt a swirling confusion mixed with fear. Who had been there? Before I could piece it together, the whispers returned, racing through the air like wind. "You've opened the door." They were layered now, hundreds of voices mingling, growing louder, insistent. "You've invited it in." In that moment, I realized that whatever I had awakened had stepped into my world. I darted back into the darkness of the hallway, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. But as I glanced back at the pantry one last time, the door swung shut with a finality that felt ominous. I bolted toward the front door, desperate to get out. But just as I reached for the handle, the temperature plunged, and thick shadows pooled around my feet. A figure emerged, formed from layers of darkness, blocking my escape. I was trapped. I froze, my heart hammering violently against my ribcage. The figure stood taller than me, its shape shifting and swirling as if it were constructed of shadows and smoke. I felt suffocated, the cool air wrapping around me like a noose. This wasn't just a hallucination. Something had come to life from the depths of the pantry. "You shouldn't be here," the voice hissed, a chorus of echoes coming from the creature. Panic surged inside me, a primal instinct screaming to run. But I was too paralyzed to move. My thoughts raced. What did it want? How had it followed me? Instinctively, I took a small step back, but the figure shifted forward, filling the space like a fog. Its presence weighed on me, pressing down with an unseen force. "You opened the door," it repeated, more insistent this time. "You let me in." It felt like a thick fog had slipped through the house, clouding my mind. I had to escape. Gathering every ounce of courage, I turned to the side, searching for something, anything, that I could use to defend myself. My eyes flicked toward the knife block on the counter. As if sensing my thoughts, the figure howled, the sound twisting around me. It churned and swirled, pulling closer, and I felt its cold breath graze my skin. I could almost see faces in the inky void, twisted expressions frozen in terror, mouths open in silent pleas. This wasn't just any shadow. It was a collection of memories, trapped souls begging to be freed. I lunged for the knives, snatching the nearest one. It felt heavy in my hand, but I had no training or experience. "Stay back," I shouted, trying to sound tougher than I felt. The knife barely illuminated the space, its reflection glinting as I steadied my grip. The shadow paused, swirling frantically. "You think you can fight me? I am the whisper in the night, the fear in your heart. You cannot escape," it taunted, its voice growing deeper, resonating through the walls. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting brief glimpses of the chaos swirling around me. I couldn't believe I was actually facing the very thing I feared. My mind flashed back. What had I read about spirits? About shadows? They could be confronted, but it required more than just a blade. I had to think fast. Adrenaline coursed through me, sharpening my senses. "What do you want?" I yelled, hoping to stall for time. "Why are you here?" Silence hung for a moment before it snarled back. "We have unfinished business." That echoed around the room, vibrating within me, awakening a feeling I had long buried. An old memory, something tied to this house. The realization hit me like a slap in the face. I remembered stories my grandmother had told me, about a child lost long ago in this very house. Could it be possible that the figure before me was connected to that tale? A lost soul yearning for attention. Before I could dwell further, a loud crash erupted from the back of the house, jarring me. I turned toward the sound, and when my gaze returned to the shadow, it was gone. In its place, a pinprick of light flickered in the darkness. I stepped forward, ready to investigate. What had just happened? And why did the figure leave so easily? Something else felt wrong. A deeper mystery. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had only scratched the surface. With the knife still clutched in my hand, I moved cautiously toward the source of the noise, knowing I was still not alone. Whatever was going on was far from over. I crept toward the back of the house, my senses on high alert. Each step felt loaded with the weight of uncertainty. The faint crackling sound of glass had chilled me to the bone, but I had to know what was happening. The knife felt awkward in my hand, a poor comfort against the unknown. As I reached the darkened hallway, I noticed the open door of the living room. The light flickered on and off, mirroring my racing heart. I stepped inside, breath hitching, but the view sent shivers down my spine. The coffee table lay overturned, and shards of glass glimmered menacingly on the floor. It looked like someone, or something, had seriously broken in. I advanced carefully, scanning for any signs of life. The air was heavy, and an eerie silence surrounded me. Just as I started to feel a sense of false security, another crash echoed from the direction of the kitchen. My stomach dropped. I wanted to flee, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Instead, I gripped the knife tighter and edged toward the sound. The kitchen was dimly lit, shadows dancing across the walls. I peered around the corner, breathless. Then I saw it. A cabinet door had swung wide open, and within its depths, a dull glow pulsated. My curiosity battled against my instinct to hide. I had to find out what it was. With each step, the glowing intensified until I finally stood in front of the cabinet. I squinted to see inside. That's when I noticed what appeared to be a photo, a faded picture of a girl, her wide eyes staring back at me with an unsettling mix of fear and sadness. She had the same hair color as me, a wild mass of curls that framed her face. My heart raced as I grabbed the photo, the edges crumbling slightly beneath my fingers. I turned it over, scanning for any writing, but found nothing. Why was this here? Suddenly, the lights flickered violently again. My heart sank. Was something coming back? I heard a rustling sound near the pantry, and I instinctively moved back. The knife felt inadequate. Then, there it was again, a shadow darting across the wall. It was smaller than before, almost childlike, and it seemed to be searching for something. "Who are you?" I whispered, desperation creeping into my voice. I thought of the tales my grandmother told, the lost child in this house. Was that her? But the figure didn't respond, only continued to rummage through the space. I could feel panic building in my chest. That's when everything went dark. The lights cut out completely, plunging me into an abyss of shadows. The faint glow from the photo remained, illuminating the figure just for a moment. In its shadowy grasp, it held something, an object that shimmered like the knife in my hand. Then I heard a soft, pleading voice. "Help me." And just like that, the shadow slipped away, leaving me alone in the dark. I was left trembling, the weight of the knife suddenly feeling trivial. I had to decide what to do. Was I meant to follow that voice? Or was I destined to uncover the secrets of the past? The darkness around me thickened, and I could almost hear whispers. I took a deep breath, ready to find my answer. But as I stepped into the hallway, a sudden chill crept up my spine. I wasn't just chasing shadows anymore. Someone, or something, was in the house. The air felt suffocating in the darkness. With each breath I tasted fear. I clutched the knife tighter, though it felt useless in this overwhelming void. My heart thudded as I inched forward, facing the hallway that seemed to stretch endlessly before me. "Help me," the voice had echoed, but I didn't even know where it came from. Panic clawed at my insides. I considered turning back, but the thought of being alone in the dark felt more terrifying. I moved forward, fighting the urge to scream. Suddenly I heard a light tapping sound, quick and rhythmic. It came from the kitchen. My instincts screamed for me to run, yet curiosity compelled me to follow. As I stepped further into the hall, my foot grazed the jagged remnants of what had once been a picture frame, and I flinched at the sharp pain. I was already on edge. This was not helping. The tapping continued now that I had moved closer. I found myself at the kitchen door, a doorway into a pitch-black abyss. With trembling hands, I opened the door and felt the cool air rush past me, sending chills down my spine. Inside the kitchen, I could see nothing, but I heard the tapping once again. I took a step forward. "Hello?" I called out tentatively. Surely someone had to be there. "Help me," the voice echoed again just as I took another step, but this time it sounded closer. I squinted into the darkness, heart racing. It was then that a flash of light erupted from behind me, a beam cutting through the dark like a knife through butter. I turned around, shielding my eyes as the hallway lights flickered back on. I gasped. There, at the entrance of the kitchen, stood the small figure I had seen before. She looked like the girl from the photo, her wild curls illuminated in the harsh light. But now there was no doubt, she was real. "Help me," she repeated. The urgency in her voice made my stomach drop. "What do you want?" I shouted, fear mingling with confusion. She took a step forward, and I instinctively raised the knife, unsure if she was friend or foe. "I need you to find it," she pleaded, pointing toward the pantry, her expression twisting from fear to desperation. "Find what?" I asked, anxiety tightening my throat. "The necklace," she cried, her voice cracking. "It's the only way to set me free." A chill spread across my body. I had no hints, no clues about a necklace, but her eyes, they held something of my own past. I hesitated just long enough for the room to vibrate with tension. "Please," she whispered again, more fragile now. Her ghostly presence felt like a plea for salvation. Before I could respond, I heard a loud crash from the living room. Something heavy had fallen. It was enough to jolt me back to reality, and I realized I had to choose. I could search for this necklace she spoke of, or face whatever had broken into my house. The girl's image flickered, and in that moment I felt myself being pulled back to the memory of the summer I spent here last. I could feel the weight of unfinished stories creeping in. A part of me was instantly drawn to her request, but another part was terrified to take a step toward that pantry. Was I really ready to find out what awaited me? I stood frozen, caught between the girl's pleading eyes and the ominous crash that echoed through the house. My mind raced. The urgency in her voice didn't just tug at my curiosity. It felt like a command. "Just find the necklace," she whispered, almost inaudible now, as if the weight of my doubt was suffocating her. The image of her flickered once more, like a faulty light bulb losing its power. I couldn't let that happen. With a shaky breath, I took a step toward the pantry. The door loomed like a dark mouth waiting to swallow me whole. What if it's just a trap? I questioned myself. But then, another loud noise broke my thoughts. Footsteps this time, deliberate and heavy. They were coming from the living room. Each thud sent a ripple of fear through my chest. I shook my head, unwilling to abandon the girl before me. She needed me. "Stay here," I said, glancing back at her. I didn't even know if she could hear me. I approached the pantry, heart hammering. The door creaked slightly as I pushed it open. It was just as dark inside, just as cold. I squinted, trying to adjust to the shadows. Inside there were shelves stacked with canned goods, dusty boxes, and what looked like a few forgotten trinkets. My fingers brushed against the cool surfaces as I searched. "Where is it?" I muttered under my breath, the girl's voice echoing in my mind. I rifled through a few old grocery bags and moved a box aside. Then I saw something glinting, tucked away in the back corner. A flash of silver. I reached for it, feeling my heart skip a beat as I pulled it out. It was a necklace. Its chain was delicate but sturdy, the pendant shaped like a small locket, ornate with intricate engravings. I stared at it, but before I could process what it meant, the temperature in the pantry dropped. A cold breeze washed over me, making me shiver. "What are you waiting for?" the girl's voice urged, more insistent this time. I held the necklace in my hand, feeling a strange pull, as if it hummed against my palm. But the sensation was drowned out by the sound of the living room, a loud crash as something massive crashed against the floor. I jumped and turned to escape the pantry, but before I could move, the door slammed shut behind me. Panic gripped me as I yanked at the doorknob. "No! Let me out!" The pendant quivered in my grip, and in that moment, the air thickened. A shadow cast itself on the pantry door, darkening the crack beneath. It was there. Whatever had made that noise was close. I pressed my back against the shelves, heart racing, piecing together that the girl had summoned me here. Was this necklace truly the key to setting her free? Or was it merely a distraction? Just then the door rattled. Heavy breaths accompanied it, tethered to an unknown form invading my home. In that moment of dread, the girl's plea rang in my ears once more. "Please, you must find a way to set me free." I felt trapped, as if I were inside a nightmare with a choice I couldn't not make. Then everything went dark. I couldn't see anything. The darkness swallowed me whole, clinging to my skin like a heavy fog. I tried to scream, but the words lodged in my throat. The only sound was my uneven breathing mingling with the thudding of my heart. I forced myself to remember the necklace. I held it up, hoping for some warmth or light, but it was still just cold metal in my palm. I needed to think. I needed to find a way out. With shaky hands, I touched the door, feeling the rough wood against my fingertips. I pushed against it, whispering, "Open. Please." But nothing happened. The rattling grew louder from the other side, like a hand pounding against the door. "Get back!" I shouted, surprising myself with my own voice. It felt urgent, like a warning. The sound of footsteps grew louder, shifting and scraping against the floorboards. I pressed myself further into the shadows, hoping to become invisible. Then abruptly, the noise stopped. It was an eerie kind of silence, like the calm before a storm. I held my breath and strained to listen. My heart refused to cooperate, thumping louder and louder as time stretched. And that's when I heard it. A soft whisper. It was low, almost a sigh, but it sent chills down my spine. "Let me in," it breathed. The voice, it was the same as the girl's, but distorted, twisted. "Who are you?" I felt foolish asking, knowing full well what was on the other side. I wanted to shout, to demand it leave, but paralyzing fear held me in place. "Let me in," it repeated, more insistent. "I can help you." My mind raced. Help? From whatever that was? The girl's image flickered again in my memory. She had wanted me to find the necklace. But why? A rush of anger surged through me. Maybe it was all a trick. I had to make a decision. Either I stayed in the dark pantry and faced whatever was coming, or I faced the unknown by opening the door. My fingers tightened around the locket. The moment felt surreal, as if I were caught in someone else's story. The door rattled again, harder this time. "Let me in," the voice insisted, closer now. Panic surged again, propelling me toward the door. With trembling hands, I pulled it open, but not before whispering a prayer. Light pierced through the crack. I half expected to be greeted by a monstrous figure, but instead, all I saw was emptiness. The living room was silent, a stark contrast to the chaotic scene before me. "Where are you?" I stammered, stepping out hesitantly. The weight of the necklace grew heavier in my pocket. Nothing felt safe. Nothing felt real. As I moved across the room, I caught sight of a figure standing by the front window. It wasn't the girl, but a shadowy outline, moving like a phantom. My breath caught in my throat. I knew I had to confront whatever force this was or risk losing everything. Then, in a swift motion, the figure turned, and I finally recognized the face. I froze in disbelief. I found out who it was, but that just made it worse. I blinked in shock, my heart crashing against my chest. The face looking back at me was familiar yet eerily different. My grandmother, but not as I remembered her. Her once warm smile was twisted into something almost unrecognizable, her eyes dark pools reflecting anguish. "Stay away from her," I gasped, my hands tightening around the knife, though it felt useless against this sacred twisted form of my family. "You're not her." The specter's mouth opened, and the whispering began again, layered with my grandmother's voice, pulling at the memories of summer nights spent listening to her tales about this house. "There's no need for fear," she said softly, her voice echoing through the dim room. "You opened the door to the past. To help her." "Help who? What do you mean?" I shouted, exhaustion clawing at my strength as I stepped closer, drawn against my will. The locket in my pocket felt hot against my skin, vibrating softly as if it were alive. My grandmother's shadow moved closer to the light. Darkness clung to her like a second skin. "Help her find peace. She has been lost for so long." Her words hung heavy in the air, almost tender, yet laced with sorrow. I glanced to the side, half expecting that little girl's image to materialize beside my grandmother. But there was nothing. "Find what?" "That necklace?" I asked, the doubt weighing heavy on my tongue. "Do you mean her?" Suddenly the lights flickered violently, casting shadows that danced like wraiths on the walls. "You've brought it, haven't you?" my grandmother urged, gesturing to my pocket, her voice becoming frantic. "Only you can complete the circle. Only you can bring her back." The words felt like a weight on my heart. I hesitated. The memories flooded back, the stories, the laughter, the warmth of the home before darkness invaded. I didn't understand what completing the circle meant, but I knew that my grandmother was bound to this place and so was the girl. "Please," the figure whispered, soft yet desperate. "Help me." It was the child's voice again, mingling with my grandmother's as if they were all part of one old, haunting echo. Taking a shaky breath, I felt the necklace surge with an energy I couldn't explain. I pulled it from my pocket, holding it tightly in my palm. The shadows shifted in rhythm with my heart, almost as if the house itself was holding its breath. "I will help you," I said firmly, though doubt gnawed at the edges of my resolve. The air crackled as the front door suddenly slammed open again, sending a gust through the room. "No!" my grandmother shrieked. The shadows around her flickered with agitation. "You have to do this before it's too late." I approached the figure of my grandmother, not to confront her but to connect. I could see the strands of sorrow intertwining in her form. "Together," I whispered, as I extended the necklace toward both her and what I hoped was the little girl. Time felt suspended. The air thickened with energy swirling around me, urging me forward. As the necklace hovered between us, the space pulsated, stretching across realms, and for a brief second, I saw them both. The sorrowful girl, still lost and afraid, and my grandmother, holding a fragmented piece of what once was. Just like that, the room erupted in a storm of wind and whispers. Shadows collided in a flurry, wrapping around me, pulling me into their chaotic embrace. "Finish it," the whispers hissed, yet I struggled against the torrent, clutching the necklace like a lifeline. There was a heart-stopping moment of clarity, and I knew what I had to do. In swift motion, I pressed the necklace against the dark swirling mass that was my grandmother. A bright light burst from the locket, casting a blinding beam that swallowed the shadows. "You're free!" I yelled out into the howling winds, every ounce of strength pouring into those words. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The room felt eerily still. Then, just as quickly, the light began to fracture, illuminating the shadows with warmth. My grandmother's face softened, revealing the warmth that I remembered, and the girl's figure appeared beside her, her expression transformed from fear to relief. But before I could feel the wholeness of that moment, the light burst outward, dispersing the shadows into streams of light that flickered into nothingness. Just as quickly as it started, the house, my grandmother's house, fell silent. I stood alone, the remnants of a profound connection still tingling in the air around me. The pendant lay cold in my palm now, devoid of its power, its purpose fulfilled. But even as I found myself once again within those four walls, a question hung heavy in the air. What had I truly released? What was real, and what was shadow? I stepped out through the door into the still night, unsure of what the future might bring. I could feel the lingering echoes, a heaviness in my heart reminding me that while some might find peace, the haunting truths of a past intertwined with fate remained resolute. Sometimes I still think about that night. As I've moved on, I've never returned to that house or that neighborhood. The tangled web of what really happened continues to swirl in my thoughts, a quiet reminder. I often wonder if the girl is finally at peace, if my grandmother's spirit is free. What exists in the darkness waiting to be discovered, both inside that house and within me.